for the first verse there, God, from my youth you have taught me, and I still proclaim your wondrous deeds. So even to my old age and grey hairs, to God, do not forsake me until I proclaim your might to all the generations to come. Those are the verses that I chose that psalm for. The nice thing about God is that we can declare his praises in our youth and right into our old age. There's never a time when we stop having people to tell about how wonderful God has been. Joe keeps me under control. Do you want to ask me a question?
To be honest, I don't know what the questions are. Tell us, go right back to the start of your life, or even before that, with your family history, and where you had an interesting childhood as well. So
yeah, go on, now you can move.
I can move. Can I
We'll figure it out.
Just so I can see the screen a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
So if you put up that first picture now.
Oh,
Yeah.
pictures.
We've got pictures.
Oh, exciting.
So this picture, I think our family story, our life story starts before we're born, doesn't it? Because we're greatly influenced by the generations before us and where we were and so on. So this young lady here is my grandma, and this is my great-grandmother. These are probably not quite all her children. So she was a Guinness, their surname was Guinness. And Dad was probably away on a mission, he was a missionary. All the Guinnesses were missionaries. Well, at least not all of them, some were brewers. And they were wealthy. Some were bankers, and they were wealthy. And some of them were preachers, and they were not wealthy. And that is where I came from. So these three little ones became vicars. That's my granny. They were all vicars, missionaries, doctors, and that kind of thing.
Just the one girl.
That's the family I came from. I have a heritage of faith, and to me that has made a difference to have that in my mind. And in fact, when I think of, heading for heaven, and there's that verse in Hebrews about running the race, I always think of Uncle Des, which is the smallest one here. This is my great Uncle Des. I always think of great Uncle Des on the finishing line shouting, "Come on, come on, you're going to make it." I think of them cheering me over the line. So that's where I came from. They were super keen people, the Guinnesses. They were fairly non-conformist. So that's that. So the next picture, lo and behold, this is my mother and father. This grumpy one is me. That's my brother Steve. And guess what? They're missionaries. So my parents were missionaries. They were among... My father went to Christ Church, Bromley, and there were a bundle of them from that church who were kind of called to the mission field. I mean, I think there were 7 or 8 of them from the youth group who all went out, and there was a picture in the local paper about them. And my mother was a linguist. He studied French and German. My father was a doctor, and he had been in paratroopers. He did his national service in the paratroopers. And here they are on leave in England, but they had already done 4 years by that stage in Uganda. So this was my first visit to England and my first glimpse of my grandma.
So why you're frowning?
Actually, what is this? What are these clothes? So let's have the next one. So this is our house in Amudap, which is north-eastern Uganda. I did have ginger hair, very ginger hair, yes, in those days. And that was known as the Black Box, that house. And I do remember that the white ants had eaten the ceiling, and it used to fall down in one corner. And it was propped up with jerry cans. And there were spiders, there were snakes and scorpions in the garden. I remember there was a monitor lizard used to live in the ceiling, and our guests in the guest room used to hear this rustling. And it was the monitor lizard in the ceiling. And we had a long drop loo right down the garden, which as children we found endlessly terrifying and fascinating at the same time. We used to drop things down here, just to see how long it took. There was that noise at the end. And there were ants down there as well. So, so my mother was a teacher. She started her first teaching lessons under a tree, because there were no buildings really. My dad had to build not only his own house, but the hospital where he was going to operate, and to build the classrooms. And they met under a tree for a church as well, on a rock, again until the building could be built. My parents loved it. This was the defining time of their life. Finding their way, and we as children didn't know any better, so we just enjoyed ourselves there. These ladies, I think these girls are bringing us milk, because they were pastoral nomadic people, and they had cows, and the milk came in these gourds here. And my mother used to boil all the milk because it hadn't been treated. And also because there was sometimes sand in it. And once on a famous occasion, a tadpole. Because they used to water it down with water from the river. And she used to say, "Why have you watered down this milk?" And they would say, we never watered that down. And they would say, "Well, what is this tadpole? What is this?" So, not only that, but you can imagine the inside of a gourd which had milk in it needs to be cleaned pretty thoroughly before you put it in again. And they used to sterilise it with cow's urine. Sorry. I don't know how they caught it. I don't know how they caught it. But in any case, there was a visitor, Jez, who's the vicar in Sea Green, his mother was in Uganda. She actually came to visit my parents when I was 3. And she said the milk had a distinctive flavour. Because it had all been boiled. It had all been boiled. So my mother homeschooled us for quite a while. She gave us Sunday school lessons till we went to school. And I do remember being taught to read my Bible every day from before I could read. We had a little booklet called Simon and Sarah with, I don't know, a picture to cover or something like that. So every single day we did what I learned later was called the quiet time, which is time with God, just with him. That we did from our earliest youth. Let's have the next one. So this is the boarding school, this is the chapel of the boarding school I was sent to in Kenya at the age of 5 3/4. It was about a 6-hour drive from home and about 9,000 feet above sea level. And it was a lovely school in many ways. We had scripture union every Sunday, to which I used to go. We learned Bible stories and we worshipped together, and there were prizes for attendance. You registered your name every week, and I remember getting to 100, and that's when you got your Bible, and that was considered quite an achievement to do 100 weeks. And there were loads of my missionary children friends there, and I do remember a group of us girls starting a prayer meeting to pray for our parents. So we found a little empty space and we sat together and we prayed for our parents there. I don't know how long that lasted, but that's an indication of the kind of faith we carried at the age of, 8 or whatever it was. So our faith was pretty well established at that time, and I was already beginning to know quite a lot about the Bible, and I still did my daily readings. I had graduated by this time to Scripture Union notes. Did anyone do Quest as a child?
Yes, I remember Quest.
Moving on to keynotes?
Yes.
Of course. Yeah,
Yes.
all those things. So that daily reading, obviously I did it by myself in my dormitory. So I remember the school being a happy time, but later on, going to boarding school at such an early age does have its consequences, as I was to find out a bit later. Next one. Then I went to boarding school in England. This is the only picture I could find of the Reverend John Pridmore of King Edward's School, Whitley, who Kathy will know. She spent a lot of her childhood there because her dad was a physics teacher, and for his sins he had to teach my brothers physics. It was a charity school. It started off as a charity school, and it was for unfortunates, such as missionary children. They provided our uniforms free of charge, so although it was a private school, it was actually for a lot of who went there didn't come from wealthy families at all. So this was a harder transition for me. The culture was quite alien to me. I went from being head girl at Turi to being, as you are, bottom of the school. And it was the teenage years, which is a tricky time for anyone. My parents were not there. I wouldn't blame them for that, it's just a fact. My parents are not there. And I remember on my first night in the dormitory, sitting on my bed, as I had always done to do my quiet time, probably on keynotes by this time. And I remember thinking, Mum and Dad are not here. My brother is in somewhere in the boys' dormitories. I'm on my own, except that the only one who is still with me is God now. And I remember at that time, there was a kind of click in my mind which said that God is the only one I can rely on. Always. As he has always been with me. And so at that time it was extremely valuable to have that solid Christian foundation, because that held me steady when I was there. And I had an independent faith already, and a well-established pattern of daily Bible reading and prayer. That's why these habits are so good to have built into our day from an early age. Some of my old friends were there too, and then there was Jasper. We call him Jasper. JSP were his initials. His name was John, but we called him Jasper. He led a weekly group, and I remember that he taught us about Tebboth, which was a brand new charity in those days, which I've supported ever since. He led the chapel services, he taught us RE, and he opened his house to everyone in the school, as far as I could tell. He dedicated an upper room to the kids. There was just cushions all the way around, a round table in the middle, and he used to ask us what music we liked. He would buy the records, and we could play them in this upper room in his house, and there was coffee, tea and biscuits endlessly supplied. I did confirmation classes with him and A-level RE, and I remember his teaching on the book of Job and the book of John and of the 6th century prophets to this day. To this day, he's a fabulous teacher, and it was through my introduction to the prophets Amos and Hosea and those, and to Tebboth, that I learnt that God was interested in justice. So, here's another picture. There I am on a march in London, and those of you who've been to St James will recognise John and Vicky Smiley there. And I can't remember who that little girl was. She was the daughter of somebody. Yeah. Anyway, I think that was a Blue Wave March, because we were all wearing blue. I marched on a few marches, dropped the debt. I had my marching whistle, which we were to blow as we went. And that was where that interest in justice came from. Just go to careers advice now. Careers advice in those days, I don't know if anyone of my age remembers, because of careers advice in those days. Not a lot about, was there? No. There was just a room full of leaflets, and you were to read the leaflets. And I spent a fair bit of time in the room looking at the leaflets and wondering, you know, what I should do with my life. So there were two things I wanted to notice at this point, and one is the constant presence of God in my life at that point, keeping me steady, and one is a teenager who is trying to work out how to organise her own life by herself. And these are the two streams which kind of run through my life, and I'm quite interested in the interface between the way God cares for us and the way we make our own choices according to what we know, and how the two come together and kind of work out. I see that in the book of Acts a lot. They did stuff, but God was doing the stuff really around them. Because if you remember, I had already concluded in my young mind that my parents were not available. So in my own mind, subconsciously, I'm on my own now, I make these decisions, and I was no one I was going to ask about it. My mother did write to us every week. It wasn't that they weren't supportive, it's just that they weren't actually present. That was all. So I ended up picking subjects for A-level and a degree course with almost no knowledge of careers, no knowledge of how this country worked, or anything like that. Random choices. I liked biology, I did biology. And then I went to university to study botany. Next minute, there we are. That's a lovely speedwalk. I love botany. Botany is a shortcut to unemployment, I can tell you. So when I went to university, living independently was obviously not a big deal for me. I've been living independently for some time. So I joined the Christian Union, as you would expect, and I went to church in All Souls, Langham Place, as you would expect. And after that, I joined 3 million unemployed. Do you remember when there were 3 million unemployed, way back in the whenever? And I ended up in Croydon working in a Scripture Union bookshop for a while before deciding to become a nurse through St George's Hospital in Tooting. There is the keen young nurse ready to go. Somebody asked me once at this stage, I was on a ward, they said, "Are you in charge?" And this is the white belt. The white belt means I've only just stepped onto this place. Don't ask me any questions. So in my new church in St Mary's, Addiscombe, I met Lawrence, my husband, and we got married when I was halfway through the nursing course. I'm skipping a lot of years now, because you haven't got time for all of that. And we started a family, and there they are, Michael and Andrew. This is way back in 2006. They're both married now, and Michael has 3 children. How are we doing for time, by the way? How much longer have I talked?
Okay. Fine. 2 more pictures, you're good.
Okay, let's have the next one. Ooh, oh no, we can't have that yet. So, we were in Croydon, and we began moving house quite a lot after that for my husband's work. We went to Glasgow. Michael was born in Croydon. We went to Glasgow, and I was 8 months pregnant with Andrew in Glasgow before we moved to Dorset. So Andrew was born in Dorset. We moved house within Dorset, and at last we landed in Gerrards Cross. We've been there 34 years now, and we worshipped at St James's Church, where I had a truly beautiful time and made lots of good friends, some of whom are here in the room. So I want to return now to those two things I mentioned earlier, of all the lovely things that happened during our time in Gerrards Cross. I was still accompanied by the idea in my mind that I was on my own in the world. This hadn't left me, despite being married and having children. And I developed a sense that I had never quite discovered my career, that place where I could flourish and make a contribution. So I felt, this is the metaphor that came to my mind, I was feeling like a pebble in a stream, just bounced along by the current here. Bounced along to places I didn't choose to go, it just took me there, and I ended up wherever it was it took me. We spent 3 years in America. I had intended to return to nursing, but then we spent 3 years in America. And I came back and I thought, I better do something. So I trained as an RE teacher, again, much which I enjoyed, but that didn't work out for various reasons, although I got some more theological study, which I loved. It's always been my favourite thing. And when it became clear to me that I was not going to teach, I hit a kind of low ebb. I hit a low ebb in my life, and I felt I had failed. I'd failed to do anything with botany, I'd failed to do anything with nursing, and now I had also failed to do anything with teaching. That was my state of mind. A lot of people would say to me, well, that wasn't true, but that was my state of mind. And luckily for me, the vicar at St James said to me, go and work for Edda in the children's department. So I went to work for Edda in her Wednesday power team, and I got into church. We were all remedial in that team. We were all being looked after and nursed. And after a while of doing that and doing a lot around St James's Church, I thought, you know what, I think I'm a churchy. That's what I am, I'm a churchy worker. I think I would like to be, but I'd like to be a proper churchy worker, you know? Not just doing a creche duty here and a coffee duty there. I'd like to do the thing properly and do it well. So the current, I'm thinking now of the current, there's me, the pebble, but I'm thinking of the current now as God himself, all around me, carrying me along to the place where he knows I need to be. And also understanding what's in here and in here that needs adjustment before he can do his work in me. So Edda was part of his plan, and working with the children in St James was part of the plan. And then when I went to Martin Williams, the vicar, and said I'd like to be a churchy worker, I thought I might become a, what do they call them?
Lay preacher.
Well, not even a lay preacher, just a lay, yeah, something like that. But he said to me, I think you should be ordained. Well, that was a surprise to me. Because I would certainly not have dared to aspire to that. My confidence was at a low ebb. I wouldn't have dared to aspire to that. And the journey towards ordination was long. It took 4 years from the first inkling to being accepted for the course. And as part of that process, I eventually, when they were convinced that I should be ordained, they last sent me to the last step, which is the Bishop's Advisory Panel. And I went to the Bishop's Advisory Panel, and they turned me down. This is after 4 years. And I'm thinking, what? I was at a dead end. Just I've reached a dead end. I thought, what are all that guidance he gave me? Specific guidance, really unmistakable guidance. And Martin Williams been so encouraging and all that. Where are we now? But Martin said to me, he came and sat with me, and we thought together, you know, there'll be a way. Because what I know about God is, he finds a way. When they were trapped between the Egyptian army and the Red Sea, he found a way through the sea. And when they were looking at that expanse of wilderness before them with no water and no food, he found a way through that. And I'm sure many of you have been at places in your life where you think, I've hit a dead end. But the Lord finds a little way through there and takes us forward. So the bishop, bless him, Bishop Allen, who's died now, set aside the advice of his advisors. His advisors said, don't ordain her. He set aside their advice and he let me go forward for ordination. So,
Sleep on the job.
there I was. So that's my first boss, Ian Brown. And that is my other boss at the other half of the benefice, Casa, who's now the Archdeacon. And there I am in the middle, feeling very, very, here I am. In the robes, wow, how did that happen? As part of my training for ordination, my advisor said to me, she said, I'm not saying you're mentally sick or anything, but she said, there's a counsellor there, free of charge. Free of charge. She said, for goodness sake, take advantage. So I went to see the counsellor, and she did me a lot of good. I don't know how these counsellors work so cleverly, but she did me a lot of good, and she winkled out of me that feeling that I was on my own, or at least recognised it, so that I could guard against it in the future and understand myself better. Because if you're purporting to minister to others, you better know something about yourself as well. So that was really helpful, and the Lord brought me along that way. So I see this, my ordination, as a arrival in many ways. I feel I landed at that point. It took me 54 years to find out what I wanted to do. That's a long time. I encourage young people when they can't decide. I say, it took me 54 years. You'll get there. The Lord will get you there. And I have loved doing ministry. Is there any more? Oh, there we are. These are my grandchildren. Henry, the big one, Sophie, and Alfie. So life, the Lord is good. The Lord is good. He leads us along. He finds a way for us, and He gives us a future and a hope. I think that's it, really. He gives us a future and a hope. So hang on to that one. That's it.